Hi for TechRepublic. I'm Karen Roby. Glad to be with all of you today. Also glad to have here with me Greg Valentine. Greg is a solution director with Capgemini. Thanks for being with me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting.
Certainly. Greg, we talk a lot about now more than ever the energy sector and cybersecurity, and people are realizing more and more just how vulnerable different pieces here in our communities, how vulnerable we really are. And it's a scary thought when you break it down. Let's talk a little bit about, this recent executive order from Biden. Let's start with President Biden. Let's start with that, the impact you think that will make on getting people in the right mindset and moving forward with cybersecurity.
Sure. I think this all stems back to the criticality of the country's infrastructure, basically. And there have been some recent breaches around the country that have been significantly impacted the country and the citizens, honestly. And so President Biden came out with the executive order and basically said, if you want to do business with the federal government, then you need to improve things. And it's pretty specific, actually, on some of the elements. Zero trust architecture is one of those, which I happen to be a big believer in, as well as sharing of information, getting rid of some of the barriers to sharing threat intel, et cetera. So depending on where you are on the political spectrum, either you think this is a great thing because the government's leading the way, great, let's go, or you're more on the other side and not pro-government, and let's catch up, right? Let's catch up to what the government is saying, where we should be, and even excel past that when we can.
All right, and so Greg, it seems like it shouldn't, politics should be left out of this, right? Our beliefs in one way or the other, because when it comes down to it, this is such a huge issue, and it impacts every company and government entities and school systems and healthcare systems. So zero trust, though, to me seems very logical. That also is a topic that we're talking more and more about. Do you see zero trust being embraced more?
I do. The term zero trust has been around for at least a decade. I think just around 10 years, maybe 11 now. And the idea is solid in the sense that it's an approach to security, right? It's not an actual product you can go buy or a service you can go buy. It's basically bearing in mind the fundamental idea that nobody is inherently trusted. Everything has to be verified and validated before you're given access. So instead of a traditional castle and moat where you have a strong boundary around the organization, but then once you get through that boundary, everything's kind of open and available, i.e. ransomware or any other breach. Zero trust, you only have access with the minimum amount of privileges that you need to get the job done to the systems that you need to get the job done, right? So that greatly limits the impact of a successful breach, be that ransomware attack or some other just getting the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. Zero trust is great at minimizing your attack surface.
Which, again, seems very logical to me, as does the idea of sharing threat intel, right? I mean, where do we stand with them embracing that as well?
Yeah, so threat intel, everybody looks at that as IP, basically, and then we need to take it and protect it and guard against it. But in reality, if you think about it, if you share intel with others, now you're greatly minimizing the effectiveness of the attacker. And isn't that ultimately the goal for everyone? You want to take away the advantage that the bad guys have. And one of those ways is by sharing threat intel.
And, Greg, when we talk about how the criminals and hackers, the bad actors have evolved and moved a lot, moving into a direction where it's, if there's nation-backed organizations and whatever, to where they're going to where they can really cause harm. It's not just about getting in, getting out, finding someone vulnerable, getting money from them. I mean, real world, serious implications, consequences for citizens of a country, and when we're talking about our infrastructure, critical infrastructure, it's pretty frightening.
Right, absolutely. And one thing that everyone has to consider is the attack surface, as I was saying earlier, right? So traditionally, the way that bad guys gain access to the OT infrastructure is by going through the enterprise and then finding their way into the industrial control system factory or refinery or whatever it happens to be. That connectivity is getting bigger now, not smaller, because the business of the enterprise needs to have access to the revenue generating side of the organization. So that makes sense. So the organization really has to take proactive measures to minimize the risk for the overall organization, right? If somebody does breach the enterprise some way, well, if you were using zero trust fundamentals on the enterprise side, they won't be able to get to the industrial control system side. But let's say they haven't done that yet, and there is a way to get, if the plant or the refinery or what have you has now implemented zero trust, now the same idea kicks in, right? The damage that can be done is greatly minimized, and yet you will be able to discover the attack, add that to your threat intel, et cetera, and hopefully share that with others.
Yeah, most definitely. And I remember, Greg, it was about 2.5 years ago, I interviewed, similar interview to this, with a former military member who was in intelligence. And I remember him saying his big push was, we need cybersecurity experts sitting on boards, big boards, because they just, so many of them were clueless as to the threats that are looming and what's to come down the road. And I remember him saying how much resistance when he would say this, he would be met with. Are we seeing now, let's say it was 2.5 years ago, are we seeing the shift though in that they're thinking, oh, wait, we do need cybersecurity experts to be involved here in our decision making?
We are seeing much more cyber being considered from the ground up, which is great. That's fantastic. I don't know, I can't speak to why that is. Maybe it's because of all the front page news headlines that have been going on for a while, or
yeah.
maybe there's some other, but traditionally cybersecurity has been seen almost as an insurance policy, right? It's difficult to measure ROI, et cetera, for it, but now everybody understands, it seems to me, that they absolutely can proactively protect themselves with good cybersecurity guidelines and projects.
And that is, a positive. And I do like to end on a positive, which we will get there. But in the meantime, in cybersecurity, unfortunately, when we're talking about it, it's a lot of negative energy that comes right from this conversation. Yes. From your seat there, and in talking about this every day, what concerns you the most? Do you think it's just the idea that the criminals tend to be one step ahead? I mean, what?
It's always a cat and mouse game, right? There will be times when the criminals are one step ahead, and then we discover what they're doing and we're one step ahead. And then, that I don't see that ever changing. That's just always going to be cops and robbers, right? Somebody's going to be ahead at any given point in time. The biggest fear I have, just coming back to OT in general, is human safety, basically. Yep. Right? These facilities are the types of facilities where not only do you have to worry about downtime and production and revenue loss, but there are actual physical implications as well, right? So chemical factories, oil and gas, energy, there could be loss of human life, and that escalates everything, of course. That trumps everything. So that's my biggest fear, honestly, is the potential loss of life.
Yeah, that's a whole different ball of wax from just, companies are going to lose money, or like you said, downtime. I mean, that's serious, but human life, a whole different, and safety, a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
All right, Greg. And before we wrap up here, as we're wrapping up, as I mentioned, it's a lot of negative, and we like to try to end on positive. I know you've worked around cybersecurity and in different facets for many years, well over a decade now. Do you, and the conversation has changed a lot around cybersecurity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What, from when you look back, what silver lining do you see going ahead, and from where we've come? Do you think just people in general being more aware, especially when things are plastered on the headlines, is that a good thing that's helping us move into the future?
I'd say it's a couple of things. One is, yes, the realization at the higher levels of an organization that cybersecurity is important and critical, I would even say, in the sense that you can take proactive measures to protect your organization, to protect your OT facilities. Now, to do that, one of the elements that I'm very excited about is the zero trust architecture concept, which gives you an approach. What do I keep in mind as I'm going down that protecting my OT assets? And if you follow the zero trust methodology or more philosophy, I think then you are in a significantly safer place than if you're going through the more old school moat and castle approach to cybersecurity.
Excellent. And again, always good to end on a, all hope isn't lost. There are
Sure, yeah,
things
I
we could
agree.
do, right? And we just have to keep learning from the past, and all of these different incidents that happen, and hoping that we don't let them happen again, as best we can. Well, Greg, I certainly appreciate you being here with us today and sharing your expertise.
Well, thanks for the invite. It was great. I loved it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate all of you out there watching. Of course, we have much more on cybersecurity, zero trust, lots of articles, videos, cheat sheets, everything you need to know up on TechRepublic. We hope you will check it out there. Thanks for watching.